Babe of the day. Babe of the day. Salma Hayek. Out of all the likable actresses to come out of the 1990s, for pure raw sexiness, Salma topped them all. Whether she liked it or not, she was definitely a sex symbol. It was an image she would never totally shake. There are worse things. She was a native of Mexico, and she came from a wealthy Mexican family. Her parents were quite well-to-do. She lived a life of privilege and got the best schooling. Salma certainly wasn't dumb. Salma's father was of Lebanese descent. Her mother was of Spanish descent. A blending of these two is responsible for Salma's beautiful, exotic look. In 1988, at the age of 21, Salma started her acting career in Mexico. By 1989, she was a major star in her own country, due to being the title character in the soap opera Teresa. In 1991, after that series wrapped, she decided to pursue a career in Hollywood. That proved to be tougher going. Salma got the same beat down that so many actors get when they first come to Hollywood. Everyone faces a different battle in show business. What Salma discovered was if you were really from Mexico, you were hard-pressed to find work playing Mexicans. Huh? They picked on her accent, going so far as to say that she sounded like a housekeeper. Hollywood casting directors generally liked Americanized Latinos or people who looked Mexican enough to play the characters Salma knew how to play. That way, they could either speak with perfect diction or whip on a fake essay accent to sound urban. It was all pretty silly, but it was a common practice that has not gone away. Salma did get some smaller roles in TV shows and movies, beginning in 1992. In 1993, she was in 3 episodes of the short-lived sitcom The Sinbad Show. This would be her first really major exposure to American audiences. Had the show been a hit, who knows what direction her career would have taken. Would she be as popular as she is today? Who knows? Fortunately, Salma's struggle didn't last all that long. By 1994, she got a big break in a roundabout way. Robert Rodriguez was an up-and-coming film director. No one knew about him back then like they do now, but he had just hit it big with his 1992 film El Mariachi. Although it was an American B-movie, it was done entirely in the Spanish language. People thought it was cool, and it got him a chance to direct a made-for-TV action film for the Showtime network. Robert was looking for a leading lady for his next movie, Road Racers, and Salma got the part. Although the movie came and went, Robert's stock as a director was rising, and he liked Salma so much that he wanted to keep working with her. In those early days especially, Robert and Salma helped further each other's careers. Their next film together was Desperado in 1995. Salma was the leading lady again, opposite of Antonio Banderas. She played self-confident and feisty Carolina, the impoverished bookstore owner. This movie was a sequel to El Mariachi, and it blew the original away. It was made on a relatively smaller budget, but became a hit. This movie really made huge stars out of Rodriguez, Banderas, and Hayek in a big way. This is widely considered Salma's breakout role. Desperado was a wild movie, filled with wild action and quirky humor. It was violent and vulgar, and, some may say, played up to every Mexican stereotype. But it's also highly watchable, and a movie that everyone involved can be proud of. It's definitely not boring, and it's not predictable. She was in a couple movies after this, but her next high-profile role would come in 1996 in the original From Dusk Till Dawn. It was directed by Robert Rodriguez and written by Quentin Tarantino. This was an odd sort of action horror film, for sure, but it was also quite entertaining and awesome. Salma Hayek's character was rather minor in the film, but extremely memorable and a total showstopper. She played an exotic dancer who reveals herself to be a vampire. As popular as her role was in this film, a lot of people tend to forget that she wasn't really in it all that long. The movie was a success and spawned a franchise of sequel films, a TV series, even a video game. Nobody wants to leave this alone. Later in 1996, Salma was in an action comedy movie called Fled. Although this movie bombed, I always really liked it, and I thought it was something cool and new for her. The movie starred Lawrence Fishburne and Stephen Baldwin. It takes a while for Salma to come into it, but she plays an important part, and her character connects with Fishburne. Although she plays an attractive woman, she's not playing a Mexican native or a vamp. She is an ordinary, but funny, American citizen who gets caught up in the problems of our heroes. It's really too bad that this movie didn't do better and that Salma isn't more recognized for her part in it, because I do think it was a positive turning point for her. I do think she got a chance to prove that she was a good comedic actress with her next movie, Fools Rush In, opposite of Matthew Perry. Released in 1997, the movie did well, but wasn't a mega hit. Still, it seems to be fondly remembered, and Perry thought it was his best movie. Her next notable movie after this was 54, released in 1998. It was an ensemble cast with a lot of famous people, but she played one of the biggest parts. It was a drama about the famous Studio 54 Club in New York City, popular during the 1970s and 80s. The movie wasn't wildly successful, but it has maintained a faithful following. Later that year, she was in another Robert Rodriguez movie called The Faculty. It was a science fiction horror movie, and although it did well in theaters and featured a huge cast of well-known actors, I just didn't care for it. A lot of other people didn't like it either, so I don't feel so bad about it. It took well over 20 years before this movie developed a cult following. Dogma from 1999 came after this. Once again, it was one of those ensemble cast movies that did somewhat well in theaters, but wasn't a hugely popular crowd pleaser. Nor did it make the best use out of Salma. Wild Wild West, which came out later that year, gave Salma a role she really deserved. This movie gets a lot of heat from critics, and it didn't make as much money as they were hoping for. But it didn't really bomb. On top of that, I thought the movie had a good cast and a good story. It wasn't much like the classic TV series, but, to be honest, I never cared for the TV series. I thought this had better acting, better effects, and a better story. Salma played Rita Escobar, the leading lady opposite of Will Smith and Kevin Kline. Rita was the daughter of a kidnapped scientist and needed their help. This was an interesting character. Rita wasn't stupid by any means, but she was sort of in her own little world. Smith and Kline's characters both have designs on her, but by the end of the movie, Rita reveals that the kidnapped scientist was actually her husband. Bummer. This is still a fun movie, and, like it or not, Salma still gave a good performance. I think it's one of her best characters. In part 2 of Salma Hayek, I'll go over her life and career from 2000 to today. Come back for part 2. Come back for part 2.